Well, hello, my friends. Happy Wednesday. Laurel Boylan here. We're here with another episode of our Legacy Leaders Live. And as many of you know, this is a time when we just pause for 30 minutes and hear stories from wonderful people like Heidi, who I'm about to talk to, who have stories of impact and stories of prosperity. How they've really found their purpose. And we just like to share these stories in hopes of inspiring you. I also like to hear your stories. So always feel free to share below in the comments as something resonates with you that we talk about here today. But today I'm super excited. I'm going to be talking to Heidi. Hi, Heidi. Good morning.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Normally, when I do this, I have you off screen and I introduce you and bring you on, but I realize I forgot to do that. So they already know you're here. Heidi lives up in northern Idaho, and she is a mom, and she is a very, very well respected leader and mentor in her industry and with her company. She leads literally thousands and trains tens of thousands of people on a regular basis through her wellness company. So I don't want to give them too much information about you, Heidi. I'm going to let you do that. But what I'd
Yeah,
like to start with is explain to us what living your legacy actually means to you, because sometimes it has a different meaning for each of us.
yeah. And I would say that at times in my life it has changed a little bit. When my girls were younger, I would say living my legacy was a little bit different than it is now. The way that I like to think about living a legacy is reaching down and helping the people that are in the situation that I was once in. So the biggest
Mm.
part of my legacy is probably my children. I have said many times in many different forums that if I can raise two wonderful human beings that
Mhm.
contribute, then I will feel like I did my job as a mom. But in
Mm.
the other part of my life, I would say living a legacy is really impacting other women. And in something that you said on here, which is giving people the ability to see something that maybe is in front of them. And
Mhm.
I think we all are given, gifts and lives we can turn around and help others along the way. And now that I'm in my 50s, I'm seeing that even more so than when I
Mhm.
was younger. So, yeah, I love impacting women. If I were going
Well,
to
it's
have one
it's
statement, it would be impacting women. So,
well, it's interesting that you say that because first of all, your girls are now women, and your two different purpose for your legacy that you just mentioned, they're really very similar. It's just one's with family and one's with non-family. But in both cases, it's about lifting them up, helping them be the best version of themselves and imparting your wisdom, your knowledge, and your experience having gone before them with people that you're helping. So you do that both with your girls and with your, teammates and the other women that you help. Why do you get so much satisfaction out of helping women versus men, for instance?
I mean, I think it's just because I grew up with a single mom, and a
Mhm.
lot of times I look at kind of my childhood and the life that we lived, and I think if there had been that woman that had come alongside her and really guided her a little bit more, my mom probably would have had different opportunities in her life. You can how it's easier to look back and see things in retrospect, right?
Mhm.
So and I've had a lot of opportunities, and so it's nice to be able to pour those into other women, and I just relate to them
Mm.
differently than I do to men. So, there's a lot of nuances to being a female, and especially when you throw children into the mix. I was thinking about this the other
Mhm.
day. I was actually just in Hawaii with my family, celebrating my grandmother's, and my aunt and I were
Mm.
talking about how, as a woman, there's so many more things that come into play than for a man. It's like a man, yes, you have your children, but you're generally not the one that is completely responsible for them. And then women go into this phase of life where she was caring for my grandmother and caring for her grandchildren at the same time. And there's just different phases where you're pulled in different ways. And I think that we as women, if we're willing to really engage with other women and help them through those different seasons, it can be such a
Mhm.
blessing to both people. I
Mhm.
really looked at my aunt and the way that she navigated managing my grandmother's care, and it's taught me a
Mhm.
lot. And that's the case in your personal life, as you mentioned, with your family, but also in business. I can see a lot of things that women can do differently in their businesses just because I've walked it before them. And so it's nice to give them that kind of leap forward instead of them having to struggle. So
I love that. Absolutely love that. You mentioned twice pouring belief into others or seeing something
mhm,
that they might not see. Seems like
yeah.
that's a big thing that you look for in other people that maybe we don't look for in ourselves as much.
Yeah, I think all of us need a cheerleader. And I think sometimes
Absolutely.
we're as women, I'll just speak for women. It's really easy to get down on ourselves like, "Oh, I don't know. I'm in this challenge right now to do 8,000 steps a day. Oh, I didn't hit my 8,000 steps." And you don't give yourself the grace of saying, "Okay, well, yesterday was insane and this and this and this happened." And I'm not saying like you give yourself an out all the time, because you definitely want to have those firm goals and shoot for them, but I think we're really good at beating ourselves up. And it's nice to have someone that has a broader perspective to say, yeah, you did 12,000 the day before, and you had all of this crazy stuff happen with your family. Like, give yourself a break. It's nice to have those people in your corner that will do that for you. And,
Mhm.
if I can bless someone in that way, I'm going to, because I think that
Mhm.
um, the world pounds on us a lot. It's nice to have the
Mhm.
people. So,
Absolutely. Well, take us back to the days when you had not found this life of entrepreneurship and that
yeah.
you were working in corporate. What did you do? And then take us to that moment where you decided to maybe branch out and see what it was like to build your own business.
Yeah, so my background's in the pharmaceutical industry, and I will say that I was kind of introduced to somewhat the idea of entrepreneurship in that arena, because the first pharma company that I worked for
Hmm.
was a very small company that allowed us to be very independent. So we really ran our territory. I had a wonderful manager that was a guide, but was not, on me all the time. It was like if I was doing what I needed to be doing, he was there to facilitate growth in other ways. And so I really experienced that early in my pharmaceutical career, but then we were purchased by a much larger entity, and that changed pretty dramatically. And it was actually one of the things that really made me question if I was in the right place or not, because I really liked the ability to perform to the level that I knew that I could without someone kind of putting all of these other parameters on me. And so after a few years of being, owned by a really large pharmaceutical company, my second daughter came along, and I really started looking at how could I do something where I really just owned my life. And it's a scary proposition when you've worked for someone for a long time and you have, a guaranteed check and you've got a lot of benefits. And I was good at what I did, so it's also, as a female, really frightening to step into something that was very, very different. And I had a lot of self-doubt, questioned myself a lot in it, because and I think that this is true of anyone that leaves something that they've been doing for quite a while to change course. That there's a lot, you have to give yourself a lot of you have to have a really big reason to do it, number one. And I think you have to give yourself a lot of grace in the learning process because you're learning something new again. And the example that I use a lot with women now is, when my girls were younger, they played piano. And anyone that's ever had a child that's played an instrument, it's miserable in the beginning. It just is because it's noisy. They don't know what they're doing. You're constantly listening to them practice. But then they get to this place where, they start to really play. And then they get to a place where they just play beautifully, right? And I look at our careers and I feel like it's the same thing. When you've been doing something for a while, you've gone through that struggle period, that growth period, and you're at the place where you're really good at it. To step back into that struggle period requires someone that has the ability to acknowledge that that's where they are. But the thing that's incredible about that is there's so much beauty in that growth that happens because it is a struggle. And that's really where we grow. So I love watching women in that process because you really get to see them flourish and you get to see different attributes of them come out that maybe were not shining before. And it's really just this beautiful transition, but it's also painful because there's struggle involved in it. So going through that for me, I was like, there were many times where I was like, did I make the right decision? Like, I had, family members around me kind of questioning me at the same time. And on this side of it, I'm so grateful, not just because of the financial resources and the time flexibility, which I have tremendous amount of both, but I think that I would not have grown as a person the way that I have if I had stayed where I was. I would have continued to grow in that industry, but it would have been very different. It would have looked very differently than where I am today. So um, that phase of transitioning was definitely a shaky one for me, and I'm grateful all these years later that I did it. And it also is the thing that I'm able to pour back into other women because I did go through that. What they're going to go through, how to help them go through it, right? Whether it's a woman, I have a friend that has just started a business, and just talking to her about, scaling something, she's never done that before. And it's really nice to be able to give her a little bit of wisdom and pour into her in that way. And then I have others that I, train in my business, and obviously I can walk the steps in that, but it's a really wonderful thing. And I found tremendous joy in it. And I don't think that if I had stayed in the pharmaceutical industry, I would have the same amount of joy in helping others as I do in this place that I'm in. So, yeah.
I love
Answer your
that.
question.
For the last 3 years, I've been very actively involved in helping women monetize whatever they are good at from their former career or current career, but monetizing that online. And so I have witnessed over the last 3 years so many, both men and women, struggle because they're used to being so good at what they do in that arena, but now bring them to this arena. They still know what they know, but they're fumbling. They don't know why they're not making progress. And so being there to help them put the pieces together, reassure them that what you're going through is normal. And it's kind of like taking a football player up to the hill and teaching them how to ski. They can be a star football player and a really great athlete. That doesn't mean they're going to feel comfortable on skis. They're going to hate that feeling of, oh, I'm going to fall. It's embarrassing. I mean, when, a lot of us, when we're good at what we're doing, we're not used to that feeling of embarrassment or failure. And so it's a matter of embracing change and looking at I have found, I always tell people that when you're feeling that uncomfortableness, when you're in the process of change, whether it's building your own business, trying to exit one job into another, we're about to move from one state to another. All of those changes are scary. And so just embracing those changes. But what keeps you going is the mindset of knowing where you're going to end up, despite how uncomfortable and awkward you feel now. So if you can visualize that successful business or that time freedom or that flexibility to do whatever it is that prompted you to want the freedom in the first place, as you're going through the struggles, it kind of keeps you on that mission to finally get there. When you lose sight of where you're going, it's real easy to fall back into your old comfortable ways and go back to
Yeah.
that old job that wasn't
No,
serving you well.
I've definitely watched friends of mine do that. I had a really dear friend of mine that actually bought a franchise, and they got into it, and I don't think that they realized what exactly they were getting into. You know, a franchise is, you're the owner, you're there 24/7. Basically, if it has to happen, you're the one that's doing it, right? And I remember it was probably about 8 months in, her husband went back to his previous position, and we were chatting about it, and she said he couldn't he couldn't do it anymore, is what she said. But I thought, oh, isn't it interesting that, I mean, you guys were so excited about this. This was, going to be and they were talking about maybe opening multiple franchises, and they had this vision, but clearly he got stuck in the doing and not looking at the long-term vision of where they had originally intended to go, and got lost in that, right? So it's so true. And I think we can do that in a lot of things in life. I mean, we do that with our health goals. We do that. I've, you know, I just had a daughter that graduated high school and one that graduated college. And it's interesting to watch them and what they're visualizing, and then how that visualization, if it changes, can really throw them. And so I think we see it in every area of life, but definitely when you're making a career change, there's especially at an age that is maybe past your 30s, and because of social media, I don't know, you are, so gifted on LinkedIn, and this is not my gifting, but I think all of us have been impacted with social media, in that we assume that the success that we see for people has come much more quickly than it has. And I know that for me personally, I've had people ask me questions about that, and I'm like, no, no, no. You just didn't see the beginning stages and all of the struggle and all of the growth. I'm there because of the things that I went through. And you going through those things is actually a blessing in disguise. So yeah, it's interesting to look at different success journeys, and the way that people handle the ups and downs.
Well, Heidi, I happen to know that you are extremely successful in what you do, but you also have worked very, very, very hard to get to where you are. Could you just share with people what you're doing now and what an average day in the job looks like for you?
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that I love is that not every day looks the same. So I totally own my calendar. And as I just said, I was just in Hawaii. So I was in Hawaii with my family there for my grandmother's memorial service. And I chose an hour out of 3 of the days that I was there to engage and do some follow up and, interact. But generally, a typical week for me looks very similar when I'm at home. I heavily pack Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday with essentially calls and follow up calls. And then I usually take Friday off and spend it with my husband. We always have date night on Friday. So the first 3 days of the week are really packed, and Thursday is kind of my catch up day. And, it looks differently now. When my girls were younger, that was much more, I would work in the morning before they got up. When they were young, I worked during the middle of the afternoon when they were napping, and then in the evening when they were in bed. And so my schedule has morphed as my life has changed. A lot of times I'll tell people the cadence of my life has changed with the cadence of my girls' lives. So now I want the ability to fly out and see my just graduated from college daughter anytime she tells me I can come. And I can do that with my schedule. But my days are, I get up in the morning, I typically exercise and I have calls. I typically do something that I enjoy the middle of the day, and I usually will do some things in the late afternoon to evening. So
I love it. Now, you are a team mentor.
mm.
How do you how do you lead and mentor your team? What are the principles that guide you in that? I'm so impressed by watching you. That's why I just want you to share with the audience a little bit about
You're
who
sweet.
are you?
Sweet. Well, I think consistency is probably the biggest thing as a leader that's important. People knowing that you're going to be there when you say you're going to be there and showing up. So, as you know, I do something every single morning that my team can plug into, which is very beneficial. Not only for them with the consistency of it, but they know that they have access to me. And that schedule that you keep and showing up when you say you're going to show up, I think are the two important things in leading someone, because most people in life, if you think about any of us in anything in life, we struggle with consistency. When someone can figure out consistency and can figure out how to manage themselves, they really can accomplish absolutely anything that they want to. We are our biggest obstacle, not other people, right? So if you can kind of infuse a way for people to be consistent into their lives, and you can help them to, really build that muscle, build that skill set, I think you've done a tremendous value for them. And so that's really what I try to do with my team members, is help to create that for them and help them to grow that muscle so that it's something that they're able to use not only in their businesses but in other areas of their lives.
Live, absolutely. Let's say that we know doing this right now that are feeling a little tug inside. They're like wishing that they could have more time freedom, or they've thought about becoming an entrepreneur, but honestly, they even know where to get started. What is your advice to somebody like that who's watching right now?
I would say go for it. If you have that little tug, there's a reason. There's a reason. So, and what is the worst that can happen? You learn, you grow, maybe you make a few friends that you wouldn't have made otherwise. Like, just dive in. Years ago, probably about 5 years into my entrepreneurial journey, someone asked me a question pretty similar, and I said, you know what? Just stick your neck out. Like, just be the person that does it, because you're going to inspire someone else, and you might even really inspire yourself. So, yeah.
I love that. I have found also that if you can find community, or even just one other person that's doing what it is that you think you might aspire to do, that's helpful,
Mhm.
because that's social proof right there that it can be done. And sometimes that's all we need. I'm of the belief God doesn't put anything in your heart and your mind that He's not going to help you bring to fruition. However, some people, they, need a little bit more than that. So just finding other people that are already embarked on whatever the changes that you're looking to make. If you're looking to move out of state, there's all kinds of Facebook groups, social media groups of people who've also moved out of state. What kind of, problems they encounter at the other end. Just kind of get involved with people, and then all of a sudden the change doesn't feel so daunting and overwhelming anymore.
Yeah, have those conversations, because I think that with social media, it's easy for people to just sit back and watch. But when you actually engage and have a conversation with someone, it's amazing the things that you learn. And sometimes where that conversation goes isn't where you expected, but it's what you needed to hear. So, yeah.
Ah, so true. Well, we are wrapping up. We went a little bit long, but thank you. I love everything you had to share.
Thank you
If
for having
somebody
me,
wants to
Laurel.
reach out and talk to you more about your business or what you do, how can they find you?
They can find me on LinkedIn. Yeah, my
Great.
contact information is there. So.
Awesome. They can also reach out to me and I can always connect them with you as well. So very good. Well, thank you so much. I truly,
Thank
truly
you.
appreciate you. And for everyone who took the time to drop in today and watch, we'd love to, know that you're here. Say hi in the comments. Share your story. If you've made the change and you've started pursuing whatever it is that was, that little feeling inside, share with us. Let us know, because you sharing helps inspire other people on their journey. So with that,
Absolutely.
we're going to close today, and I certainly hope that everybody has a great rest of the week. Bye for
Hi, everyone.
now.